Hi, this video is gonna be about squaring the circle again. As you can see, at a certain point, after it goes over this line, these 2 points appear, and they disappear over here, and they reappear again. Alright, now the blue circles are 5 proportionate pi values, so true pi. So this will be the circumference area of the circle, and this will be the area circumference of the circle with their respective areas. And the pink or magenta ones, this will be the circumference square of the circle, and this will be the area square of the circle. But the circumference will always have a smaller value compared to its area square version, related to the one diameter circle. It doesn't have to be specifically the measure of one, but the diameter itself, because this can be moved, scalable fundamentally. Though it's a little wonky, but you get the gist of it if I get into it. Like, some of this is giving GeoGebra a hard time to try to show it, so that's why it looks glitchy at the bottom. But let me just drag it back to here for simplicity's sake, for the proportions presented here. So the pink values are the approximate pi approximate pi values, and the blue is the true pi values, and the red here is the dynamic demonstration of what's going on here. That's in the static of the blue and the pink or magenta. So this line here, from this point C to point P subscript 1 is of this value, which its square root is this value, which becomes a square in itself, which this same square is over here. So this square is this square, and all I'm trying to show you guys is that this part over here, these 3 points. So how is this made is, first you use this red square over here to center the square to the diagonals, which dynamically this is how it looks like when I move this. And let's get closer here. So here's this red square. If it goes through all the way through, it goes like that. However, this line here is, maybe I could show it a different way. So this line goes here and all that, but this line over here, this line always has a point on here which goes to there. So there's a line that goes past this point and onto the unit square here, but it's past the perimeter square of this square root value of this magnitude upon the diameter. Okay, and so there's a point that comes when you make the tangent line from the square perimeter of a circle conveyed through this line here. And it goes through this way. Alright, so there's one and there's two, and the third point is using this tangent that goes through this line here. So this line comes last actually, and I didn't make a point here because that's making it overcomplicated. Anyways, it flips over right at that point. So let's take a closer look. This angle here is clearly more than 90 degrees, but ideally you want to get it so that this will be zeroed out, and if it's zeroed out, that means these 3 points vanishes, and this vanishing point is when the square, the tangent of the square, the tangent line of the square, the angle relating to the tangent of the square, and the combined tangent of the square and the angle of the square are the same angle. And why am I showing you that is because the pink one is not using the proper proportionality, and the proof of that is to zoom in. The approximate pi values, they make 3 points over here, see? And this blue line, blue triangle thing is what it should be if it's actually is geometrically squared, which the pink squares, or the pink angle, the tangent angle stuff, it's not unified, or not unified per se, because there's a composite unity here that's conveyed with the circle, but it's not truly a unity because it's not one. It's not actually the one in a sense, in a philosophical sense. So let me move this from C to P subscript 1 is this length. From P subscript 1 to B is this length, which I could move at will. And here's what it looks like if I go all the way around. So a square circle has to at least be more than at least more than less than 45 degrees in this part, or more than 45 degrees in this side, but it can't be over the blue line, or else it's not squared. And this thing here is the square rooting of the square, which means this line here represents the area square. Well, not directly, but it represents the area square with this line here centered to the center point, then made a square out of that, which, if you couldn't tell, this line here is two different lines. I might zoom in over again. So false pi and true pi over here. So the true pi length is also the length of this. Well, I mean like the side of the square of this. So this times 4 is the perimeter of that square. So likewise, I did the same for the pink one. And let me just zoom in over here. So this value here, this one, this is the true length of the motion curve, or it's a conic actually. It's a part of a conic, but it's a motion curve that squished the circle that, I forgot the name of it, but this is how far the quadratics, the quadratrix or something. So this is where that, 1 by 1 square, a certain conical curve would reach at this part at the bottom of the curve when it reached the bottom of the square, from the corner of the square to the bottom of the square, which is not to another corner, but to off the center point, but it crosses the center of the cube, of the, not the cube, but the square, but curves downwards to this magnitude here. But this is not technically a conic, but it just shows where it would equal to. So this is what the false pi value will be for that, and this will be the other false pi value for that, which people don't realize that this other value, which is the trilemma that I keep talking about in my book. Why is there 3 points here, but why is there only one here for the blue one? Let me zoom in here. The blue one is perfectly 90 degrees to the tangent square. The tangent line of the square to the angle that blue square is touching the, or subtended upon the 1 diameter circle. So I'm just showing you guys what it looks like up close. So this part, this really proves that this value is wrong. And if this value is wrong, that means that technically speaking, nobody still has squared the circles, so to speak, using approximate pi, because this is the quadratic's value, length, as to where the point of the curve would reach on the 1 by 1 circle. 1 by 1 square, my bad. And this value here, the 0.785, this is pi over 4. The red one is the red squared value, whatever it is now. The blue one is the true pi over 4 value, length, or circumference of length, or yeah. And this is the area cube of square of that, not the cube, sorry. I could get it very, 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 very close to the blue line, yet it will not equal to the blue line no matter what. No matter how much you complain, the blue line here is completely different. So I made it very, very close. You can see that the values converge, but what do they converge to? That is the question that I have, which is already answered, but people refuse to believe the answer. So a generalized statement is that if all these 3 points disappear as one, that's when you're really squared the circle. Alright? So these angles here, they're much better than the angles over here. This is 3.82, 38.24. This is all less than 38.2, as they're much closer. So this random value right now of the red square is much better than the false pi value right now, but it's not perfectly exactly the same value as the blue one, which only has itself as the point. I try to explain this in my book, but I don't know if you guys are geometrically illiterate, mathematically illiterate, or illiterate, or just completely stupid, or completely unamused by this. But this is really the only geometric proof that's also the disproof of false pi that is really not that big of a deal, because how I have made the blue line stuff, I did multiple videos. But let me show you again. So I go like this, alright. I go like this. Then I go like this. Yeah, close enough. And then I go like this. And I go like this. And there you go. You got this blue circle. Presumably you imagine me making another circle here. And then you make a perpendicular to that. So yeah, it's not that hard. And again, this is scalable. It doesn't matter how big it is or whatever. It's always true. Whether you believe that is true or not, that's not my problem. Because ultimately, this is the proof. And if you don't believe it, you just don't understand it. You're just inept. Very, very inept. So why is this right, but why is the approximation false? The answer, ultimately, is that Euclid and Archimedes, they presumed that the circle has something to do with a known number. However, ultimately, the circle is contingent upon an aspect of the proportion of phi against the diameter square. So diameter squared ratio phi, which is then square rooted which then leads to its measure, but it's not really its measure, but it's this square root proportion of that ratio, which you multiply by 4 to get its perimeter, which that perimeter is the same as the circumference, so it's not directly claiming it is circumference, but rather derived from the diameter using a specific proportion of phi against a square of the diameter. Which is what this line is, this blue line here is. It cuts the diameter into proportions of 1. Okay, so this will be 1 and this will be 5. The proportions of 1 to 5. However, since this is technically diameter 1 here, alright, diameter 1, a phi cut will make this part 1 over 5, which this line over here is the square root of this line over here, this magnitude over here, using the 1 diameter circle, which is used from this point to the perpendicular of it that reaches the subtended upon the circle, which this diagonal or chord here then is the square root of this value here, or square root of the proportion, which then again made into a square like this, which then you could center it into this center point to derive the angles of the square to the circle, or the circle to the square. Doesn't really matter. And that's how you get the angle. So let me move the red line here. Okay, so this angle here, this angle here. Yeah. Well, anyways, I've said enough. If you guys don't get it, you'll just never get it at this point. I tried my best. Maybe someone better could explain it, but there's no better way of explaining it other than when this disappears, you square the circle. When those 3 points disappear completely, you square the circle. At least the diameter circle, I mean the perimeter circle, which then you could derive the square of that, which is the area of that circle, of the unit circle of whatever magnitude. So yeah, the implications of this though is that these angles are all wrong. Okay, whatever angles you see on here, they're all technically wrong and off-centered, except for the blue's square-based angles, which for this one is 90 degrees. For this one is 38.172, blah blah blah. But it'll be slightly different because radians uses false pi, but it'll still work on the fixed radian paradigm, constant paradigm. I mean, in changing the constants from what it presumed to be to what it actually is. And before I end this video, I should say that this isn't really unique to what I've to me specifically. This is just me elaborating upon work that's already been done. Yet at the same time, no one has talked about these 3 points that I'm aware of. And if they are, well, sorry, but I missed out, I guess. Well, but regardless, I understood it for myself. And even though people like what's his name, Robert Lawler, technically squared the circle, so to speak, he actually didn't really explain much, which is the great downfall. But at the same time, he is among the academically first to realize that the true pi is 3.1446 yada yada yada, instead of the 3.1.4115 whatever. I just blocked that false value out of my mind, really. So if you really square the circle, again, I repeat myself, you should only get one measure, 1 point. Well, you don't have to technically measure this because this is arbitrarily picked point. So you could confirm it for yourself if you have a very, very big piece of paper that to arrive to a point where there's only 1 point out of many vain tries, though the general explanation versus the actual explanation, again, are two different things, because the general explanation just says that these 3 points will disappear at the right angle, magnitude, etc. But how to arrive to the blue measure is very precise. It's a precise phi cut of the diameter to derive its square. In using that square, using the square root of that as the square to arrive to the angles of the square to center to the diameter that it is generated from, as means to arrive to the angles, the blue angles, this one here, to arrive to the angle of this square and circle to its center, to its shared center, which then is used to confirm if it is really meeting at 1 point, which in the red one it's always off because it doesn't snap to this value here. So this is, in a weird sense, a Gnosis explanation, since there's a certain measure that arrives to this, to the precise point of the, to the 1 point instead of the 3. But at the same time it's not, because I also have a more specific core of that generalization or form or geometric constant form description with a more specific formula to arrive to the circumference square, which then used to arrive the area square of the circle. I keep repeating myself, but maybe if I do, some of you will understand what I'm trying to say. So this angle here shouldn't be 95 whatever, but if it is really the squared circle, it would, I mean the circle squared, it would be 90 degrees over here, which it is for the, again for the blue, it really is. $90. See its angle and this setting. If you don't believe me, accentuates the angle if it is emphasize right angle. So this is turned on. If I turn it off, I shouldn't turn it off, I guess, for now. But yeah. There's also 1 point over here, again showing you, because some of you just don't get it. Just don't get it. I don't know what to say to you guys, really. You either get it or you just don't. And if you don't, well, you have no understanding, no truth in you. There's really all to it. There is to it. Just don't have the truth in you if you don't get it. And again, I'll say it again, but maybe slightly differently. But Robert Lawler was the first academician to realize the 3.1446 ... proportion of the circle if it has a diameter of 1. But it's scalable, so. But the problem here is, again, that in my book I explain how it's not that measure, but that proportion of it rather than the measure, which the proportion of it is 3.1446 ... So it doesn't matter how big it is, really. And whether you get that or not, it's not my problem ultimately. Some people will never get things. Anyways, I hope you guys learned something and ask better questions or email me or whatever. But this is really gonna be the last time I gotta explain this part of the book that has the similar diagrams in it, and I am working on it to be even more clear, and I might make a video showing those improvements, but an in-depth explanation of it, not anymore, at least on the topic of the squared circle. If these 3 points disappear, you square the circle as 1 point. Not completely disappear, but as one single point. I'm just zooming in to showing you how different the points are. So these pink points are not on the blue lines and such. Oh, and I should say this, but okay, so this point here, if you make a perpendicular, you have this line here, which this line to the diameter could be made into a new circle with its specific magnitude, which then you could use to make another different circle from a presumed arbitrary circle. But you cannot do that if you use the blue 5 proportioned cut ones, because it'll be all 1 point and there'll be only one line instead of 2 lines, one line instead of 2 lines over here as well. So think about it. Really think about it.